and like using LinkedIn. I did have a friend recently that was at a company, and they had let go a ton of senior developers and like midway developers, and she's like, yeah, I'm honestly not a strong developer. I don't know why I'm here. And when I talked to her, I'm like, well, every time I've talked to you and we talk about your work, you know everybody in the company, you know what they do, what's going on in their life. When there's a problem with like this dev team and the product team, they send you to go communicate to both parties because you can talk to the dev team, and then you also have that really personable connection with the other folks. So, she has weathered many layoffs and isn't the strongest developer there. However, her personality and just knowing all these people, networking, and being that people person has really taken her many places in the company. So.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, as a sidebar to jump onto that, is the more interpersonal skills that you can really have, the more that is kind of unique sometimes in development. Having really strong communication skills and team building skills and just being able to work really well with a team sometimes really sets you apart from peers. And like Danny said, even if you're not always the strongest developer there, if you're easy to work for and with, people like that, and so you sort of stick around a whole lot longer. So that is definitely valuable. Something else I wanted to mention on the LinkedIn thing is you can kind of use it like a blogging tool to talk about the things that you've been working on. So sort of talk about the projects you've been working on, barriers you've kind of overcome, things that you might or could have done differently, technologies you want to sort of implement in the future, changes you want to implement in the future. Link the project and also give screenshots if you possibly can. LinkedIn really likes that and sort of promotes that more than other posts that don't have it. The algorithm tends to like that. If you really want to get super detailed, you can also start a blog. A lot of people do that. But LinkedIn is a really good place to do sort of short little snippets about, hey, here's what I've been learning. Check out what I'm up to. And it shows that you're active in things. Even if you don't get a lot of engagement, people do still see those. So absolutely use it that way.
Yeah, and like we talked about with all those little micro learning projects, post all those. Like, hey, today I learned how to do this and this framework or whatever. Like, people get excited about that stuff, and we all geek out about it. If David's like, hey, I used Plotly for the first time today. It was pretty cool. I'm gonna be like, oh yes, I remember when I first used it, and like I did this, and he's like, oh, I did this, and like then we're gonna geek out about it, and then that just builds our connection. And then maybe I'm like, oh, David, we need somebody that does visuals at my job. Like, you're using Plotly, that's what we use. Like, let me send you a link over.
Actually, as part of Michael's comment, there are a lot of really good online meetups too. Sometimes it's a little easier to do that first and sort of get sort of socialize with people before you really get into an in-person environment with them. So I actually have a really long list here of really good Slacks and Discords to check out. So here those are in the chat. Those are decent places to start out if you're feeling a little apprehensive about that, because it's easy to. But like Danny said, a lot of tech people are super excited that you're just talking about it, and they're super excited that you're excited, and that's a good thing. So don't be afraid to really talk about your journey and what you've been sort of what you've been doing and what you've been up to, because that really is super valuable. So sort of talking, I guess, bridging into talking about like applying for jobs and sort of best practices when doing that. Definitely apply on the company's website always. And the reason I say that is it helps sort of filter out some hiring scams. But more importantly, a lot of jobs just kind of sit on job websites for a really long time. Like you can have something sit on like Dice or LinkedIn for a really long time. And you like, hey, this is a great position and it's open, you can apply to it. And then it's like, whenever you go to apply, it's been down for like 2 weeks and it isn't actually open, which is really annoying. But with that, what I would recommend is apply on the company website, then go to LinkedIn, see if you can find people sort of associated with that job, other people that are sort of on the same team as that job. Would be recruiters are really good people to reach out to. HR, especially hiring managers, if they have that little purple hiring banner, they're perfect to message. Not everybody's going to get back to you, but you can get a lot done with just sending like the really short 300 character connect message to somebody and asking them a few questions about a position and say, hey, I'm really interested in this. Do you have more time to talk to me? If they don't, they won't respond most likely, or they may sort of point you to somebody else, which is also a good outcome. And then sometimes they'll say, yeah, sure, I have time, we can talk about it. Or they'll give you a few answers to some questions you got. Pro tip on that, connect messages are weird. And so once you connect with somebody and they like accept that request, they don't easily see your message that you opened with until they like go kind of into their message. So you can always follow up with them and ask your questions and things. That sort of prompts them to actually respond to you. But that being said too, if you do connect with some people and say a company's like hiring in the future, but not really right now, put in a note to follow up with them whenever they mention for you to follow up with them, or in a couple months or whatever. Follow up with them pretty regularly if you can, especially recruiters. I would say every couple of months is plenty. Any more than that can be kind of annoying for the person. Any less frequent, they kind of start forgetting about you, or you may miss stuff. So definitely follow up regularly. If you're not really finding stuff in your area that you want to apply for, don't be afraid to explore other opportunities that you didn't initially consider. You'd be really surprised what you can find that is really up your alley, and you don't even really realize it. It's really surprising. So definitely do that. Another thing too, with job descriptions and sort of the job titles, it's really weird the way some job titles are titled. So for instance, Coastal and like Fifth Third call like senior consultants but they're juniors. They're like super entry level. So it's really confusing, right? If you just read the job title, you'll probably pass over it because you're like, well, that's senior. I don't qualify for that, right? And you just sort of move on. So always read the job description. It is always worth it to do that. If you think that you are 60% qualified, apply. It is not really your job to self-select out. It is their job to figure out whether you're qualified or not.
That was some of the best advice that I've ever received, is never tell yourself you're not qualified, let them. And throughout my career, that has landed me so much higher roles than I thought I should have ever landed in. And, I'd read the job post and be like, oh, I can't do any of that. And then turns out I can do it really well. And, some of the ways they describe things weren't quite what they were. So it definitely happens. They try to shoot for the most ideal candidate on every benchmark. And they want you to fall short on some of those.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. It never hurts to apply to stuff, and it also again really never hurts to really read job descriptions and also ask people questions about it. Like, hey, you say you use this. How often do you actually use that in the job? Is that like a big deal, or do you not really need it? And you'd be surprised, because sometimes in job descriptions, say Python, I don't know, comes off as like a super important tech, but then you talk to somebody and they're like, we'll teach it to you on the job or whatever. And it's like, well, I wouldn't have gotten that from the job description, right? So talking to people about them, that's really, really important. And I was, Lisa and Brandon, sort of that deal sometimes. Like they may say they're looking for that. That's sort of a wish list. They probably realize that they're not actually going to get that. And so apply anyway. You might be the best candidate out of the people who applied, right? So definitely apply anyway. Another way to sort of get more into tech is use your current workplace as sort of a starting point. So there's a lot of organizations, companies, nonprofits, whatever you want really, that have technical needs. And you can usually find a space in that organization doing some technical things. You may not be doing everything that you want to be doing, and it may not be super development heavy, but it is a good place to sort of fit in the early stages of your career. It really is, especially if you've been somewhere for a while. Another thing you can do too, if you're in sort of a big company, is look for positions you can kind of move into, and you already are in that company, so you kind of have a foot in the door. Sort of easy to cycle into something like that. You also have a direct line to people who already work in those positions, so you can just ask them what they do day to day, and there is tons of value in that, even if you don't ever end up getting a position on their team. That can be really valuable to figure out what people are actually doing in the industry. Cindy, sort of to answer that question in the chat, it really depends on the position. Some expect a little bit more of you than others. In general, there is a lot more on the job training for entry level and junior employees. That's kind of expected a little bit. Like, they know that you're not going to know everything. Otherwise you wouldn't be entry or junior level. So they're going to teach you some things, especially if they have like really specific or proprietary technologies. They know that you're probably not going to be exposed to those. Danny, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what you've hit on there is really important. Also, if you're really true to yourself, and then you also ask that employer that information, they're going to let you know, typically pretty truthfully, like, we expect you to be ready for the job, and then you've got to be honest with yourself, like, is that something that I'm okay with, or does it seem like it's not going to be a good fit? And then that's where reaching out to those other folks. There were some jobs that I applied for where, like, that was something I knew going in, is this company has no structure. It's like the Wild West. I was told, yeah, we have a list of problems, and however you can solve it, whatever language, free reign, you grab it and go. And I was like, that's where I will excel in that. Like, you just start putting out problems and I'll start finding solutions. There's a ton of people that's not going to work for. Like, the less structure you give me, the more I'll excel in that. So for me, that's good. For you, that might be the worst job you've ever had. So.
And I was going to say, on a sidebar, I'm more of a structure person. If I don't have structure, I will build it. So I would lose my mind at a company like that. I couldn't handle it, right? Like, I would explode. I'd burst into flames. So, like, it really, yeah, it just depends. Like, it's a good way to figure out like how the company kind of works. Because at the end of the day, you're also vetting that company to even see if they're a good fit for you, right? Not just vice versa. So, like, looking for an internship, that can be a solid way in as well. Keep in mind, make sure that works for you. Some of them aren't paid or not very well paid, so that is something to pay attention to. It is a good way to get in, though, especially in a company that you haven't necessarily worked at before. If you have really no tech experience at all, they're good ways to sort of hop in. A lot of CodeU students end up in them in one way or another at some point. So that is pretty solid.
They're usually paid internships too.
That's fair.
So much jump into a non-paid one unless it's really prestigious and like checks a lot of boxes. Otherwise,
and
get paid for my time.
And I was going to say too, on Danny's point there, if they're pretty prestigious and they're with like a big fancy company, they're almost always paid, as a rule. Usually the unpaid ones are aimed at college students who don't necessarily know better. But yeah, most of them are paid. Just make sure that the pay and everything works out well for you.
Big thing that helped me with interviews too is, it helps if you're not desperately searching, but I was in a good place where I had a job that was good and stable, but I was looking to change careers. But I looked at it whereas I was interviewing the company. So I would let them answer I'd answer their questions, and I'd be like, well, now it's my turn. I want to know all this about your company to know if I even want to work there or not. And in some cases, that's like gotten companies that I had no interest in working on, like doing crazy counter offers. And I was like, no, I morally don't agree with anything that you all do. I won't work for you. They're like, well, what if we give you 30,000 extra? And I'm like, nope, still not game.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can really position yourself in a way that you can really ask a lot of pretty good questions about about sort of what a company does and their culture and things, you can, I don't know, sort of flip the table a little bit and get them to offer you more than you ever expected. It's sort of a strange thing. But I was going to say too, something I did want to touch on is sort of staying motivated while applying to jobs. These days, you're probably going to have to apply to quite a few of them, even if you get sort of a warm introduction to somebody, right? There's a lot of people applying to stuff. There's a lot of jobs open. And so it is really important that you kind of take time not only for yourself during something like a job search. You need to take breaks and things like you would be in learning a new technology, right? You really need to sort of take time away from it sometimes so you don't get burnt out. Because if you do, that is extremely bad. Don't get burnt out. Something I would recommend that everyone do is, at the very minimum, keep a spreadsheet of jobs that you've applied for. Not only does it sort of keep perspective on how many things you've been applying for, how many companies you've been applying for, but it also helps you to better understand what companies and what positions you sort of get more feedback on, and what companies are maybe more interested in hiring you down the line. Just because you get rejections now doesn't mean that you'll get them in the future. And if you get somewhere like a proper interview or two, that is cause enough to continue applying to that company because they're obviously interested in your skill set. You may have just been not exactly the right person for that position. The thing with the spreadsheet too, it also helps you avoid that really awkward, like, I don't remember this job that I applied for. Can you please explain it to me thing? Don't do that. That's bad. So that the spreadsheet really does help with that. Very, 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 very much. The other thing too, with projects, sort of about staying motivated, right? Because building projects sort of all the time, it can get a little exhausting over time if you feel like you're doing that with no real end in sight. At least it has for me. And so with that, update your skills on your resume to sort of reflect what you've been up to and doing. That helps not only keep things up to date for whenever you apply to other positions, but it also gives a really good indicator as to how far you've come in sort of your learning journey. It is never a bad idea to look at that and acknowledge it. It really does help kind of push you forward, or at least it helps me move forward. I know that. Oh, and the other thing too with applying to positions, this is, I forgot this and then I wanted to come back to it. If you're getting interviews, that is a positive thing. Even if after the interview it doesn't work out and you end up not getting the position, the fact that you're getting interviews means that your resume that you are submitting to that particular position is working. So apply to more stuff at that company, apply to more stuff like that. Keep doing what you're doing. Do mock interviews if you possibly can. The only real way to get good at interviews is to do them. And we do mock interviews here. August Mack and Ginny Terry are very good at them. And we also have some partners like community and technical partners that do technical interviewing as well, mock technical interviewing. So super useful, super, super useful.
Something else helpful with that spreadsheet. When I was doing it, I was starting my coding journey. So I was applying kind of all over the space. And I found I wasn't getting any hits back on entry level All my hits were like mid to senior level positions that I would just, get a wild hair and be like, let me apply to that and see how it happens. And so that immediately was like, okay, I got to stop applying for entry level jobs. And like, apparently my skills are more in the mid and senior level. So, that helps you then figure out what's working, what's not working. And then you can go back to build up the skills on the things that you might be missing in that space to make yourself a stronger candidate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Amy asked, worked for a large company for a long time, is wondering if you have any advice on remote, like how to get remote positions. So do you mean sort of going remote in your current company, or do you mean applying for other jobs outside of your current company, I guess, is my follow-up.
Oh, definitely applying for outside of my company. I know my company doesn't have a lot of remote positions, and I'm kind of like, a 9 to 5er. And
Got it.
I know it's going to be a big transition. Everything you guys, as far as like the spreadsheet and the making sure that you connect with other people and then all that is rated by bar. I feel like it works. But I'm curious if you have any advice. I don't know if your all's background, if you went from like a corporation to remote, and I just don't know if you have any advice on just how to get the flow going when you're used to, I guess, because David, you said you were more of a structure person. So I don't know if you have any advice on after getting the job, how to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of my background, I used to be in the public school system, and then I ended up getting hired with CodeU, which is all remote. And so for me, yeah, that would probably be my biggest thing, was setting up my own structure a little bit, at least at first, because CodeU is, I would say, a pretty structured environment as a general rule. But whenever I first started, I really didn't know what I personally was doing. I had stuff I needed to do, but I used a lot of things like Google Calendars. I used a lot of things like Slack statuses or MS Teams statuses, if that's what your company uses, to let other people know what I'm doing. I set up a lot of tasks. You can use things like Monday.com or Notion to make sure that you are sort of on track with things that you are trying to complete. Those things help me a whole lot. I don't know, I talk a whole bunch to my coworkers, which I find extremely helpful. And honestly, that is probably the most important part of being successful in a remote position, is like talking to your coworkers, because it's really easy to not. Since you're behind a computer screen, you don't see them in person, you don't really think like, oh, hey, I saw Danny. I need to talk to him about that project thing that we need updates. I have to be more intentional and be like, I need to message Danny, right? Now I need to set up either a huddle, which is basically just a Slack call, a meeting, something. I need to talk to Danny about this thing, and I'm going to have to go out of my way to do that. But it's always worth it to go out of your way to do that, right? So I would say that those are probably the biggest things, is use the tools provided. If there aren't very many tools provided, set up your own with like Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar, whatever you use. MS Bookings, Notion, Monday.com, Trello are really, really helpful for remembering tasks and completing them. The really nice thing too about all those that I listed, they will bug you if you miss a task. Like, so if one comes up and you kind of miss it, it'll ping you and bother you to get it done, which is super nice. A lot of things too, like Slack or Microsoft Teams has this remind feature where if, say, Danny messages me something and I'm like, I can't deal with that right now, but I can in a minute, I can hit like this little remind thing and it will bug me again in an hour to say, hey, respond to Danny, or hey, you need to act on whatever Danny was talking about. But beyond that, biggest things are really talking to your coworkers, figuring out sort of the ins and outs of the job, and talking to them honestly a lot and being really intentional about it. Is that helpful?
I'd say on that space too, like I set up a lot of to-do lists, and like David said, we're counterparts. So if we don't talk to each other, there's a good chance we're going to overlap work, which is super important not to do, especially whenever you're limited on time. And nobody likes to duplicate work, but that's what we do a lot. We set up our meetings. We meet once a week. We talk about things, plans, wishes, dreams that we want to do work-wise, and then we start tackling them however, and then just kind of follow back up with each other all throughout the week. And, you know, sometimes David reaching out like, hey, like I did this, or I got a question about something you said earlier last week. You know, then it sparks something in me, and I'm like, oh yeah, one, I thought of a better way to do it now, and then two, like I had to follow up with you about this thing. So otherwise, you know, we work in our own bubble and we just don't get a lot of progress made. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure
Okay.
can.
So another thing I would add to that is like, don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's like you may feel like, oh, I'm not qualified, or I don't have anything to contribute, or oh, they're probably so busy with their stuff they don't have time to talk to me, but most people will actually, they like being consulted about their expertise. They like being like, I know that there's like one project at my work that I've kind of taken unofficial ownership of, and I always, it always tickles me pink when someone asks for my help with something with it. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and it's also always better to ask for help than to try and do it on your own and break something maybe. So yeah,
I could not agree more with that. Yeah, always ask for help if you need it, and be pretty intentional about that. A big part of the job is figuring out who to ask help from whom. In sort of a in-person situation, it's kind of a little bit easier. I feel like there's some more what's the word? Unspoken social cues maybe that you get from people, whereas all online, all remote is a little weirder. Takes some getting used to, you know.
Some internships have that built in, so like they expect you to ask for help, and part of your making it through the internship to a full-time job is like how able you are to utilize the resources that they provide you, but then also to lean on coworkers and get other folks involved. And it's like unwritten. It's just they want to see your initiative and how you're going to interact with people. And if you're a problem solver and you don't work with anybody, you'll never get a job with them, because that's part of the unwritten rule there. Christopher, you got a question?
A comment, actually. Another thing about asking for help is, you know, be respectful of that person's time. And a lot of times if you tell them, hey, do you have 15 minutes? Can you help me? They may not have it now. They may have 15 minutes later. And so I've found that that's been a really good way to be able to get more help, really, because you're trying to be respectful of their time.
Absolutely. And also providing like more context. It's always rough if somebody's like, hey, can I have help? You're like, well, with what? But if you're like, hey, I need help with project A, I've tried B and C, they're not working. I hear you're the guy that wrote this. Like, what do I do? Then they're going to be like, oh yeah, like I forgot to publish a documentation to this, so I'm gonna fix that, and then yeah, let's meet and go over it.
Yeah, and I think the really important part too is that like you've made an attempt or two, like you've tried some things and you're like, I really just cannot get over this barrier. I don't know what to do. That's the time to really start asking folks, and nobody is going to be mad at you for asking that. They're really not.
I kind of go about it if I've spent an hour on it by myself, leveraging all my resources, and I've made no headway. It's a good time to ask somebody something.
Right.
It might be like, hey, where's a good link to solve this problem? Or can you help me? Or, you know, this isn't clicking. I don't understand this. Or where's this function calling from? Or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, like let's go over that. This is super complicated. So for the question about what debugging tools can we use in the field or for data analytics, so there is the built-in debugging tools and things like VS Code. You can utilize those. A lot of times in actual production code, we're writing actual tests before we write our code. So usually you'll write a test case for your code before you write code. And then in which case you'll have like assertion error. So it will go ahead and print out an error of what the actual problem is and why your test didn't pass. So things like that. And then like syntax issues, there's like the PEP8 style guide. That's how you're supposed to correctly write Python. And then there's a variety of, they're called linters. It's a built-in software that you can download as like an extension, and that'll format your code correctly. So if you define a function, technically you're supposed to have 2 lines after the function. You're not supposed to indent, you're supposed to use spaces, things like that. It will, well, you indent, you don't tab, indent, use space, indent, but it'll format all your code correctly in that regard. And that's where we were talking about those GitHub actions. You build those, and those, whenever you try to push your code up to GitHub, it'll come back and be like, hey, you failed. You've got 93 errors. And then there's a new set of rage that builds in your body that you never knew existed. Going and fixing all these little spaces and things. So, yeah. I'll post some of the stuff in the chat for you. David, you got anything?
No, but are there any other questions so far? Oh, no problem, Cindy. We're happy we could help. We really are. But yeah, sort of. I don't know. Sort of. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. What's up? Or is that a misclick?
Oh no, it wasn't a misclick. I'm just curious, like, as somebody who's I haven't graduated. This is my tech event, so I was wanting to get about it. As somebody who is, we're on the capstone project of our cohort, when do you guys recommend we do start applying? Because I've thought about, do I start applying now? Just go ahead and put in the applications now, or do you recommend, like, after you've gotten past that graduation point before you even start putting in your applications?
On my side, for more technical positions, I would recommend having a project on your resume. That's really important for sort of success in that world. If you're already have some projects and things ready to go, then go ahead and apply, no worries. If you're applying to stuff more in like the adjacent area, you already have some relevant skills like project management or product management, anything like that, you're good, go ahead and apply. Basically, to me, whenever you feel about 60% qualified, you're good to just apply. And if you're really excited, like 40, just apply anyway. It'll be okay. Danny, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it strongly depends on your background there as far as like how realistic it is you will get a job. But definitely, like, if you do have your project mostly finished and there's like actual things to show and that's the only thing you have, I would wait till you're like very close to being finished, where you're finished, before you really start applying. And then, like I said, with those micro projects and things, start working on those other tools. Your first couple interviews you do will be like a learning experience. Just because if you're getting new into the space, they're going to talk about things that you've probably never heard of that we couldn't have covered in the class. And you're like, oh, those are the things that I got to look at now and like start to wrap my head around. Understand. So like that helped me a lot whenever I started applying for jobs. It's like, oh, okay. I thought I was a little farther along in the learning process than I was. I've got a lot to learn.
Every day I feel like I get like that. So every time I think I've forgotten something, it immediately stumps me and thinks I'm like, well, I actually don't know anything. So
are you completely new to tech? Is this like your first?
So I started Code U with I guess it was I guess it's the January cohort, the one that's finishing up now. Man, it's already flown by. But I actually started trying to learn to code probably, I'm going to say about 7 months before I started the cohort. And I just felt like I was, like I'd signed up for Codecademy, like I have their pro subscription, and I'd use free Codecamp, and in some ways I still feel the same. And it's nothing that Code U has done. Sometimes I just have a trouble retaining information. And even like right now, when I'm writing my capstone, like going through JavaScript, I want to beat my head against the wall because sometimes I feel like I've forgotten everything. It's like they just taught me this stuff, and I feel like I should know it. And then I like my hands go to keyboard, and it's like, what do I do next? so that's it's
Totally
feeling,
normal.
yeah. So I feel
In your
like
case-
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I'd say in your case, I would wait till you have that project finished up and ready to go, then start applying, and then do keep working for sure. Just because you don't have like other coding projects to fall back on, it doesn't sound like. So
No, I guess when to really answer the question, yeah, I'll be new to tech. I come from customer service. Like I'm a call center rep right now, so I don't really have a tech background. I love coding. It's fun so far when I don't want to be, when I don't feel completely dumb when it comes to JavaScript. It's just JavaScript. It's killing.
yeah, and I mean, I wrote from memory like this crazy Docker compose file and like made all these containers and this crazy stuff, and then literally today I had to look up the syntax on how to write a dictionary in Python because my brain just couldn't remember, and I was like, I just wrote hundreds of lines of code that was way more complicated than a dictionary. Like, is it where are the curly braces going? Like, I was so upset with myself. So,
If anything
don't
I've
feel bad,
gotten
those
here, if anything I've learned tonight, 100% is I'm not the only one.
the key is though, I knew within 5 seconds. Like, I just Googled. I knew exactly what to Google. Like, Python dictionary, W3 schools, click the link. It's like, oh, there it is. Yep, had the braces in the wrong place. And that's what sets us apart from, the person that doesn't know anything about this field. It's like, I might not remember every piece, but I can get to it lightning fast and solve my problem. So
I think we probably have time for one last question. What do you think, Danny? So that is, let's see. There's one question that I think I missed. John, right. Is it unrealistic to go after remote jobs for your first tech job? And what are your thoughts on using Dice and Flex Jobs for your first tech job? So I don't think it's totally unrealistic. I think though that you are in a much wider pool of applicants. So it can be a little harder to land that first remote job, just because you have sort of people you're applying to and competing against all across the nation typically, or at least across several states, whereas locally or at least hybrid, it's sort of a different pool of applicants, a lot smaller. So to me, that makes things a little easier. If the applicant pool is smaller, I would recommend starting that way first. Also, if you're a junior developer, it is really important for you to be able to build relationships with your coworkers and ask questions of them. If you feel really confident doing that in a remote setting, great. But if not, maybe hybrid or in person is sort of a better fit. As far as Flex Jobs and Dice, Flex Jobs, some people here I know have used it and gotten some luck out of it. We do have some keys for that with the career coaches. So August Mapp and Jenny Terry do have those. Don't pay for it. We do have some keys. They're free to you. And then the other thing is Dice is fine to source jobs from. I would highly recommend applying on the company's actual website. A lot of the times Dice doesn't always have everything updated. And so sometimes things will just be a dead link, or you could run into some scams on something like Dice. So that'd be my only advice there. Danny, anything to add?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's crazy that, you know, getting a remote job's your first job, but doing all the steps that we talked about, you got to make yourself jump out beyond the piece of paper. And in this day, it's not even a piece of paper; it's a file in a system that, unless you get somebody's attention, they're never going to see that file. So, if your application doesn't meet the exact requirements of the tracking system once, and it doesn't get pulled for your interview, then like making those connections on LinkedIn and you being a name that they think about, then they'll pull your application is what really sets you apart in a lot of instances where like, I might be more qualified than you and apply for the job, but you reached out to the person, you made a contact, built a relationship, they pulled yours, and they're like, yeah, like how, you know, Brandon, he's a nice guy. He was pleasant on LinkedIn. Danny, I've never heard of him. Like he sent a resume, didn't add a cover letter, couldn't care less. Like, looks like Brandon's our guy. So, you know.
Yeah, that stuff really does matter quite a lot. Yeah, same too with making posts and things on LinkedIn. If that's your inclination, people are more inclined to pick you up for jobs if they see you're sort of an active member of the tech community and that you care. That really does matter quite a lot. On that note, though, we are a few minutes after, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and we can end this properly this time without accidentally ending it for everybody. Yeah, thanks everybody for hopping in with us. We really appreciate it. If you have questions down the line, feel free to message us. This is sort of the list of all the folks that are on the careers team. I'm sure Danny went over that at the beginning, but these are all sort of the people here to help you. So feel free to message us. Slack is a really good way to grab us also. That's where we're most active. So please hit us up, and thanks a lot.
Reach out with any questions. Happy to help you where I can.